Hi there, welcome to this week's episode of the Cruise News Roundup from the Solo Muster Drill. It's May 18th, 2025. Coming up in this week's episode, we talk about Royal Caribbean's continued expansion of their private island concept worldwide. We discuss what's going on in Sitka, Alaska, and what implications that might have if you have a port call scheduled there on your next 2026 Alaska cruise. We also talk about Princess Cruises and Holland America Line, who have both recently opened up their bookings for bucket list cruises coming in 2027. And we also take a look at the offering in 2028 from luxury cruise band Crystal Cruises. They have a 150-day cruise which will run from January to June of 2028. And then there's the big announcement this week from the smallest cruise line in the world, Margueritaville, as it gets set to expand its fleet. And then finally, we look at some ships that return to sailing after dry dock, and all has not been going smoothly. So stay tuned in case it's a ship that you're scheduled to sail on soon. So up first, we look at Royal Caribbean, and this week there's been a couple of big announcements. As we know, Perfect Day Coco Cay in the Bahamas has been hugely successful, and development is also ongoing on the Royal Beach Club on Paradise Island, right near the cruise dock there in Nassau. And now, added to that, following on from their announcement in 2024 about a planned development of Perfect Day Mexico, which will be in Costa Maya, Royal Caribbean released a lot more information this week about what will be on offer there. So Michael Bailey, Royal Caribbean CEO, described Perfect Day Mexico as being bigger and bolder than anything the company has done to date, and he's also predicted that it will be the new jewel in the crown of Royal Caribbean's destination portfolio. Attractions will include a water park which will have as its centrepiece a tower called the Jaguar Tower. Now this is going to accommodate a 170-foot tall water slide, and that'll make it the tallest water slide in either North or South America. It will also have the world's longest lazy river. It'll have 10 pools scattered throughout the island property, and as usual it's an experience that will promise to cater for all. It'll have 12 restaurants, 24 bars and a number of adult only areas. When it opens in autumn 2027, Perfect Day Mexico is expected to feature on Western Caribbean itineraries. So generally they will be sailing from Florida and also from New Orleans and Galveston. And then there's been even more news on the private island front, with confirmation from Royal Caribbean that they're progressing plans to create a private island in the South Pacific. Now, this was first mooted back in 2019 and at that point had an expected opening date in 2022, but progress was hampered by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it now looks like plans are very much back on track. So Perfect Day at La Lipa will be located on La Lipa Island in Vanuatu, so that's an island nation in the South Pacific. It's expected to feature on itineraries sailing from Royal Caribbean's seasonal home ports in Sydney and Brisbane, Australia, and the opening of the island is planned for early 2027. So although it's intended to provide a perfect day for visitors, Royal Caribbean representatives have indicated that it will have a much different look and feel than its North American counterparts, and it'll have a strong focus on connecting with nature. This is expected to appeal to its main target market of Australians and New Zealanders. So in addition to the expected complement of pools, bars and restaurants, the island will also have a nature trail as one of its main features. And Perfect Day at La Lipa will also be a tender port. So next up we have news from Sitka, Alaska. And residents began voting there this week on potentially bringing in restrictions to limit cruise ship visits. So the proposed restrictions would apply to cruise ships carrying more than 250 passengers, and they would seek to impose a daily cap of 4,500 people, and also to restrict cruise ship visits to 6 days per week. So in the event that the vote is successful, the restrictions will come into effect for the 2026 season. Based on the already published cruise ship schedules for Sitka in 2026, they're already pretty full right through from the end of April to the end of September, with many days due to see 3 and 4 ships in port. So it seems likely that any restrictions would necessitate significant alterations to itineraries and unavoidable disappointment to many cruisers hoping to visit Sitka. So now turning to news of the 2027 Grand Voyage collection from both Princess Cruises and Holland America Line. Now both have a reputation for doing very interesting itineraries worldwide. Holland America's 120-day Grand World Voyage will be on the Volendam. So that's due to set sail from Fort Lauderdale on January 5th, 2027, and it's a full circumnavigation of the globe. It'll visit 53 ports in 28 countries. It'll have stops in South America, many stops in the South Pacific, then on to Australia and New Zealand, and then across Asia, Africa and into Europe, and then after that it's a transatlantic crossing before it returns to Fort Lauderdale on May 15th of 2027. The itinerary includes several overnight stays in port, and this provides guests with an opportunity for a more immersive experience at each of those destinations. Now, just a word of warning, if you're someone who looks forward to your own little balcony haven on a long cruise, you should be aware that the Volendam is one of Holland America's oldest ships. It was built at a time when balcony staterooms weren't commonplace, and as a result it does not have standard balcony staterooms. There are a limited number that have direct access to an outside area, and they're known as lanai staterooms, but they open directly onto a promenade deck which is essentially accessible by all passengers, so it is not your private outdoor space. At present, Holland America's website is only offering the option of guarantee cabins in that lanai stateroom category, so you may need to move very fast if you want to secure one of those. Also setting sail from Fort Lauderdale in January 2027, and with general reservations opening up this past week, is Princess Cruises' Coral Princess. Now that's going to be doing a 129-day Grand Circle Pacific voyage. This cruise will take in 55 ports, and like Holland America's offering, it will start with the Panama Canal crossing, and after that it'll focus its itinerary on destinations in the South Pacific. It'll then head on to Australia and New Zealand, and it will be followed by several ports of call in Asia before making a return Pacific crossing, this time on a more northerly route from Japan to Alaska. And the final weeks on board are on the southbound Alaska itinerary, which will end in Los Angeles on May 15th of 2027. So the Coral Princess is also an older ship, but this mid-sized ship has in the region of 700 staterooms with balconies. Present, as per Princess Cruises' website, there's good availability, and there's also the option of actually selecting your stateroom rather than accepting a guarantee cabin. There are also a number of options which allow you to book shorter segments of this overall voyage. Who really plans ahead and is looking for an ultra-luxurious experience for a bucket list world voyage, the recently announced 2028 offering from Crystal Cruises may be just right for you. So this will be a 150-night voyage. It'll depart from Fort Lauderdale in January 2028, and this time it's going to be an itinerary that will take in a whopping 84 ports as it travels westwards around the globe. The itinerary at present does include a transit of the Suez Canal for its route from the Middle East to Europe, so who knows how that's going to pan out. The voyage ends in Fort Lauderdale on June 10th, 2028. As well as the standard all-inclusive offering that you would normally get on Crystal Cruises, guests undertaking the full world cruise will receive a whole host of additional benefits. So that includes things like business class flights, $1,500 onboard credit, private transfers and luggage valet, and also complimentary laundry service, much needed on a 150-day cruise. So starting prices are at $69,000 per person based on 2 sharing, and that's for the lowest grade of cabin, which is an ocean view. Now, on the positive side, Crystal Symphony has 18 ocean view cabins which are specially designated for solo travellers. Prices haven't yet been released on those though. So now moving from an ultra-luxury cruise brand to a growing budget brand, Margueritaville. So it's currently the smallest cruise line in the world with just 2 ships to date. So for anyone unfamiliar with this cruise line, it's a reinvention of the Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line, who in 2021 entered into a partnership arrangement with Margueritaville Resorts and Hotels. So when it launched, it had just 1 ship, the Margueritaville at Sea Paradise, and that focused on short cruises between West Palm Beach and Freeport in the Bahamas. Now, reviews were honestly very bad at the start, but they have been steadily improving since the introduction of a second ship, the Islander, last year, and that does 7-day itineraries from Tampa. And this week came the big announcement that a 3rd ship will be added to the fleet. The brand are requiring the Costa Fortuna from Costa Cruise Lines, and it will be their biggest ship to date. Now, as yet, it hasn't been confirmed where it will home port, so watch out for more news to come on that. We look at the fortunes of 2 ships that have recently returned to sailing after periods of dry dock. So first up, there's the Grand Princess. Now, that's on its first sailing, doing its Alaska season. It's a 2-week itinerary which departed from Seattle on May 6th. There are numerous reports coming from guests on board about problems with the plumbing system, and that includes malfunctioning toilets, unregulated water temperatures in bathrooms and also heating issues, with the ship being reported to generally be very cold. So overall, it doesn't appear to be a good situation, and there's no word as yet whether or not Princess are going to offer compensation for the inconvenience. The second ship hitting the headlines this week is the Carnival Miracle. So that commenced its first sailing of its European summer season after completing a dry dock in Cadiz in Spain. Now, in fairness, a lot of the controversy is not actually Carnival's fault. So it set sail from Lisbon, Portugal last weekend for a week-long sailing which will end in Dover in the UK. And that's where it'll home port for part of the summer as it sails Northern European itineraries. The difficulty arose for some intending passengers who arrived at the terminal in Lisbon without having applied for an electronic travel authorisation, or ETA, to gain entry to the UK. The UK introduced the electronic travel authorisation system earlier this year, and it appears to have caught many people unaware, despite the fact that Carnival have resolutely said that they had notified all passengers of the requirements. So the end result is that there were some very unhappy people finding out in Lisbon that they didn't have the correct authorisation in order to board the ship, as it was eventually going to disembark them in the UK. So some were able to rectify this by making their online application on the spot and receiving approval immediately. Others were not so fortunate and their applications weren't approved in time to allow them to board the ship. So that's all for this week. If you enjoyed the show, please consider hitting the like button, and if you'd like to stay up to date on when new cruise content and new news roundups are coming out, please consider subscribing. For now, thank you for watching and have a good week.